Husband of black woman signed divorce with mistress beside, and the judge made them pay. The courtroom air felt heavy, thick with quiet judgment. Daniel Ruiz leaned forward and signed the divorce papers with a confident flick of his pen. Beside him, Rebecca Lang sat poised, one leg crossed over the other, her lips curling into a faint, satisfied smile. The faint glimmer of her diamond bracelet caught the light, a silent display of triumph. For her, this was victory. For Daniel, it was freedom. Across the table, Tasha Brooks sat still, hands folded, expression unreadable. Her posture carried no trace of defeat, yet no visible anger either, just calm, controlled silence. To an outsider, she looked like a woman too tired to fight, too broken to care. Daniel took her silence as surrender, the final confirmation that his double life had won. The judge glanced up, his tone procedural. Both parties agree that the separation is mutual and voluntary? Daniel answered quickly, "Yes, Your Honor, completely mutual." Tasha only nodded once. Her eyes did not lift from the table. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. That sound, firm, decisive, final, seemed to mark the end of something far greater than a marriage. Daniel leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Rebecca reached for his hand under the table, squeezing it gently as if to say, "It is over." But Tasha's silence was not emptiness. It was calculation. Inside her stillness, something deliberate was unfolding. A quiet storm waiting for its moment. As Daniel and Rebecca exchanged smug glances, believing the humiliation complete, they did not realize that the real story was just beginning. The papers he signed so confidently would soon become the weapon of his own undoing, and the woman he thought he had destroyed was the one who had just set the trap in motion. 6 months earlier, the mornings in the Ruiz household still looked perfect from the outside. The sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, glinting off the neat stack of dishes as Tasha Brooks flipped pancakes on the stove. The faint hum of the coffee maker filled the silence, but the warmth in the air was gone. Daniel sat at the table, scrolling endlessly through his phone, a faint smile flickering across his face. The kind of smile a man wears when the message on his screen feels more important than the person standing in front of him. "Breakfast is ready," Tasha said softly, placing the plate in front of him. He did not look up. "Just leave it there. I have a few calls to make." She nodded, forcing a small smile that did not reach her eyes. The silence between them had grown heavier with each passing week. Late nights at the office, hushed calls taken in the hallway, unfamiliar perfume on his shirt. All the signs were there, subtle yet undeniable. One night, while folding laundry, she found a delicate gold bracelet tangled in Daniel's jacket pocket. It was not hers. The initials R.L.T. were engraved inside. She stared at it for a long time before placing it carefully back where she found it. Her heart thudded, but she said nothing. The next day, Daniel returned home past midnight, smelling faintly of expensive wine and a scent Tasha had never worn. He offered excuses that no longer needed to be believable. "Work dinner ran late," he said, eyes avoiding hers. Tasha wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but something inside her stopped her. She realized there was no point in arguing with a man who had already made his choice. Instead, she chose something far more powerful: silence. While Daniel drifted further away, she began observing every detail. The change in his passwords, the unexplained withdrawals from their joint account, the sudden urgency to restructure assets. Each red flag was stored quietly in her memory, not as pain, but as evidence. At night, when the house was dark and Daniel pretended to work in his study, Tasha lay awake beside the empty side of their bed, not broken, but thinking. She knew that pretending would not last forever, and when the truth came crashing down, it would not be her world that shattered. It would be his. It started with something small, a comment that was never meant to sting. Tasha was having coffee with her friend Carla when she casually mentioned, "Rebecca's new purse is stunning," said it was a custom order from Italy. Tasha froze. The purse Carla described sounded exactly like the one she had ordered 6 months ago, a gift Daniel promised to surprise her with. But it never arrived. He said the order got cancelled. That night, when Daniel was asleep, Tasha quietly sat at the kitchen counter with her laptop. The room was dark except for the soft glow of the screen. Her heart thumped harder with every click. She opened their shared credit card statement. At first it was ordinary, groceries, utilities, gas. But then she saw it. A purchase from La Mireille Boutique, the same luxury store that sold the purse. The date matched the week Daniel had traveled for business. Her breath caught. She scrolled further. There were other strange transactions, expensive restaurants she had never been to, jewelry stores, hotel charges in the city where Rebecca worked. But it was not just the spending that hurt. It was the pattern, the precision of his deceit. Tasha leaned back, staring at the numbers, the lies wrapped in receipts. The man she once trusted with her heart had been slowly building a secret life, financed by her own home. The next day, she visited the bank. When she asked for a copy of their mortgage details, the banker hesitated before explaining that Daniel had taken an additional loan, using their house as collateral. For investment, he had said. But Tasha now understood what that investment really was. Rebecca Lang's luxury lifestyle. Her fingers trembled as she held the paper, but her eyes were steady. The pain was there, raw, quiet, and deep. Yet beneath it, something colder began to form. Not revenge, not rage, a plan. When she walked out of the bank, the air felt different, sharper, cleaner. Tasha Brooks was done being the silent, trusting wife. This was no longer just about love lost. It was about justice earned. And from that moment on, every smile, every word, and every move she made was part of something much bigger than Daniel Ruiz could ever imagine. Tasha Brooks did not scream. She did not confront. She did not cry. When she learned the truth about Daniel and Rebecca, she chose silence, the kind that unnerves, the kind that listens. Every night when Daniel fell asleep beside her, pretending to be the loving husband, she opened her laptop and began her quiet investigation. The soft glow of the screen lit her determined face as she scrolled through bank statements, call logs, and messages. Each click was a note in her silent symphony of justice. She started saving everything. Screenshots of transfers, receipts of dinners Daniel never mentioned, messages that hinted at secret meetings. She backed up everything twice. One copy on a hidden drive, another sent to a private email. When Daniel texted Rebecca late at night, Tasha noted the time. When he claimed to be working late, she compared his location on shared apps and wrote it down. Slowly, she began to see a pattern, not just of betrayal, but of arrogance. He thought he was untouchable. And that thought became Tasha's greatest weapon. She downloaded call recordings, tracing conversations that dripped with deception. She learned how to read his lies through tone, pauses, and laughter. Every piece of evidence became a puzzle piece, forming a clear, damning picture. Days passed. Weeks blurred. On the surface, she was the same calm wife, preparing dinner, smiling faintly, asking nothing. But inside, she was building something powerful. Control. Her silence was not weakness. It was precision. Sometimes she stood in the hallway watching Daniel leave for work, his cologne lingering like a ghost of their past. And she whispered to herself, not yet, because she knew, when the storm came, it would not be loud. It would be perfectly timed. By the time Daniel noticed her distant calm, it was already too late. Tasha Brooks was no longer the woman he deceived. She had become something else, a strategist cloaked in grace. And every secret she uncovered was another step closer to the moment he would finally understand what silence can do when it belongs to a woman who has been wronged. The morning air felt heavier than usual when Tasha Brooks walked into the quiet office of Andre Bennett. There was no fear in her eyes, only calm purpose. Andre, known across the city as a lawyer who turned impossible cases into victories, looked up from his desk and immediately sensed that this woman was not here for sympathy. She was here for strategy. Without a word, Tasha placed a folder on his desk. Inside, it lay months of quiet labor, screenshots, financial records, recorded calls, and legal documents that tied Daniel Ruiz and Rebecca Lang together in a web of deceit. Andre flipped through each page, his expression shifting from curiosity to genuine respect. "You built this yourself?" he asked, almost in disbelief. Tasha nodded. "I just needed someone who knows how to finish what I started." Andre leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing slightly as he studied her. "Then you came to the right person." They spent hours going over every detail. Andre admired her precision, no rage, no impulsive moves. Every file she had prepared was dated, organized, and cross-referenced. She had done half the work of a legal team on her own. Together they formed a plan that was more than revenge. It was justice, wrapped in patience and timing. The goal was not to destroy Daniel in private. It was to let him expose himself in public. Andre smiled faintly as he drafted the documents. "Let him think he has already won," he said quietly. "We will let the truth arrive right when he feels safest." Tasha agreed. Her silence had built the foundation. Now, strategy would do the rest. As she left Andre's office, sunlight touched her face. For the first time in months, she felt lighter. Not because the pain was gone, but because it now had purpose. The storm she had been preparing for was no longer just hers. She had an ally, one who knew how to turn evidence into power and betrayal into a public reckoning. In the weeks leading to the court date, Daniel Ruiz began to feel untouchable. His arrogance grew with every passing day, as if betrayal had given him a strange kind of confidence. He moved out of the house without guilt, leaving behind the woman who had built his peace for 12 years. Rebecca Lang, now proudly seated beside him in public, made sure the world saw their new life. Her social media glittered with designer handbags, luxury dinners, and weekend trips to beach resorts. Each post carried captions like, "Finally being chosen feels right." The world believed their love story was real, but those who looked closer could see that it was built on borrowed money and lies. Tasha Brooks saw everything, the photos, the comments, the staged affection, but her face remained unreadable. She did not react, did not post, did not explain. Every silence was intentional. Each time Daniel or Rebecca tried to provoke her, she met their mockery with the same calm smile that unsettled them both. Daniel often taunted her during their brief meetings about legal documents. "You will thank me someday," he said once, voice dripping with superiority. "You will see this was best for both of us." Tasha only looked at him and nodded slightly. "Maybe," she replied softly, her tone giving nothing away. He mistook her calm for defeat. He believed she had accepted her fate, that she would walk into court quietly, sign the papers, and disappear from his life forever. But behind that silence was a storm he could not imagine. Rebecca's laughter echoed across their online lives, but the audience could feel the tension building. The sense that every image she posted, every luxury she flaunted, was a countdown to something bigger. Tasha was not losing. She was watching, letting them dig deeper into their own illusion. Because when the day came, and the gavel finally struck, they would realize that what looked like silence was never surrender. It was strategy, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The courtroom was silent except for the faint shuffle of papers and the ticking of an old clock on the wall. Daniel Ruiz sat tall in his chair, his suit perfectly pressed, confidence radiating from every gesture. Beside him, Rebecca Lang crossed her legs and adjusted her silk blouse, her lips curved into a practiced smile. They both looked as if they had already won. Across the room sat Tasha Brooks, calm, still, composed. There was no trace of anger or fear in her eyes. Andre Bennett, standing beside her, exuded quiet authority. He had seen arrogance before, but this case carried a different weight. The judge called the case. Daniel's lawyer stood up, speaking with the rehearsed rhythm of someone who believed the outcome was certain. He painted Tasha as a resentful wife refusing to move on, as someone trying to cling to a man who had outgrown her. Rebecca smirked, her expression screaming victory. When the lawyer finished, Andre Bennett rose. His movement was deliberate, slow, confident, and calm. "Your Honor," he began, his voice even but firm. "The defense has spoken at length about emotion. Let us now speak about facts." He placed a thick folder on the table and began pulling out documents one by one. "These are bank statements," he continued, showing over $200,000 transferred from Mr. Ruiz's joint account to Miss Lang over a 6-month period. The courtroom stirred. Daniel shifted in his seat. Rebecca's smile faltered. Andre moved to the next file. "And here, Your Honor, is a voice recording where Mr. Ruiz himself describes how he planned to move marital assets under the guise of business expenses." He pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the room, confident, careless, unmistakable. "It is easy," the recording said. "Tasha does not check the details. She trusts me." Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Andre did not stop there. "And these," he said, holding up printed screenshots, "are public posts from Miss Lang's social media accounts. Captions such as, 'His money looks good on me' and 'Finally living the life I deserve.'" Rebecca's face turned pale. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice broke. That was a misunderstanding." The judge raised a hand, silencing him. "Enough," he said sharply. "This court will not tolerate deceit presented as confidence." Andre continued, calm as ever. "Given the evidence, Your Honor, I request immediate freezing of all joint accounts and a formal investigation into financial fraud and asset concealment." The judge took a long breath, scanning the documents again. "Request granted," he declared firmly. "All accounts connected to Mr. Ruiz and Miss Lang will be frozen pending investigation. Furthermore, this court denies the divorce petition as presented and grants Mrs. Brooks primary entitlement to shared assets." Rebecca's eyes widened in disbelief. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked around the room as if searching for someone to blame, but all he found was the weight of his own arrogance staring back at him. Tasha remained silent. She did not gloat, did not smile. Her victory was not about revenge. It was about truth finding its voice at the right time. As the judge's gavel struck, the sound echoed through the courtroom. The same sound that had opened the story, but now it carried a different meaning. It was not the sound of an ending. It was the sound of justice. Outside the courthouse, chaos unfolded. Reporters rushed forward, microphones clashing, cameras flashing in a storm of questions. "Mr. Ruiz, is it true the accounts were frozen?" "Miss Lang, did you misuse company funds?" Voices collided, each one hungry for a headline. Rebecca Lang tried to shield her face behind oversized sunglasses, but the bright flashes still caught her trembling hands. Her designer bag, once a symbol of pride, now looked heavy, a reminder of everything she had flaunted and lost. Daniel Ruiz kept his head down, pushing past the crowd, refusing to answer a single question. The confidence he had worn so proudly inside the courtroom had vanished into shame. Tasha Brooks stepped out moments later, not surrounded by bodyguards or lawyers, but by quiet. Her pace was steady, her expression calm. The cameras still turned toward her, hoping for a reaction. Anger, triumph, something dramatic. But there was none. She simply walked past them, her silence louder than any statement could have been. Andre Bennett followed behind, keeping a respectful distance. As they reached the car, he finally spoke, his voice low, almost reflective. "You did not just win a case, Tasha," he said. "You ended a pattern." She looked at him, understanding the weight of his words. For years, Daniel had built his confidence on control. Financial, emotional, and social. But that control had shattered the moment truth stepped into the light. Across the street, Daniel and Rebecca argued in hushed, frantic tones. Their once perfect image was crumbling before the public eye. The life they had built on deception was dissolving faster than they could contain it. Tasha watched for a moment, then turned away. There was no satisfaction in seeing them fall, only closure. She had fought not to destroy them, but to reclaim herself. As she got into the car, the noise faded behind her. The courthouse, the reporters, the chaos. All of it felt distant now. What remained was a quiet strength, the kind that grows after surviving something that was meant to break you. Tasha had not just walked away with justice. She had walked away free. And that was the victory no one could take from her. Sunlight poured through the wide glass windows of a modest but bright new office. The air felt lighter now, filled with quiet energy, not tension. Tasha Brooks stood at the front of a small meeting room, surrounded by a team of eager young professionals. On the whiteboard behind her were plans for community workshops and mentorship programs for underprivileged students. This was her new beginning, Brooks Educational Consulting. What had started as a dream, buried beneath years of silence, was now real, alive, and growing. She spoke to her team with calm confidence, the same composure she had carried in court. "We are not just teaching," she said. "We are building futures." Her words carried weight, not because they were loud, but because they came from someone who had learned the value of quiet strength. A quick montage followed, a handshake with new clients, a seminar where students listened attentively, and a small plaque of appreciation from the community. Each frame reflected purpose, not revenge. On her desk sat a single framed object, the gold pen Daniel Ruiz had once used to sign the divorce papers. It rested there like a symbol, not of loss, but of transformation. The same tool that had marked an ending had also marked her rebirth. The office buzzed softly with conversation and laughter, but Tasha took a moment to look out the window, the city stretching beyond. Her journey had not been easy, but it had been honest. A calm voice echoed, her own, soft but certain. She did not shout. She did not beg. She prepared, and when the truth spoke, it roared louder than any revenge. Justice, she had learned, did not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrived with grace. Sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of a bright, modern office. The air carried warmth, the kind that only comes after a long, cold storm has passed. Tasha Brooks stood before a small team gathered around a sleek conference table. The sign behind her read, Brooks Educational Consulting. Her voice was calm but confident as she spoke about upcoming community projects, mentorship programs, and school partnerships. The people listening to her saw a leader, but none of them knew the full story of how she had earned that strength. The room was filled with laughter, ideas, and optimism, a striking contrast to the silence that had once defined her life. Every plan she outlined, every word she spoke came from a place of purpose. She was no longer rebuilding from pain. She was building toward impact. On her desk sat a simple frame. Inside it, the gold pen Danielle Ruiz had used to sign the divorce papers. It gleamed under the sunlight, a reminder of how far she had come. What once marked the end of her marriage now stood as a symbol of justice, patience, and renewal. A quiet montage unfolded. Tasha shaking hands with clients, hosting seminars for young women, speaking at local schools. Faces lit up around her, inspired, grateful, hopeful. She paused by the window, gazing at the city skyline. The world outside looked new, but so did she. A soft voice carried over the final moment, her truth, spoken like a promise. She did not shout. She did not beg. She prepared, and when the truth spoke, it roared louder than any revenge. Sometimes victory does not come through anger. It comes through dignity, silence, and the courage to begin again.